Fast food talk, folks.
not gonna tick off a potential sponsor with what was going on here, but it was getting funky.
All right, Football Outsiders. We have the free agents. I am Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders. Welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream for Thursday, March 17th, 2022, St. Patrick's Day. And, you know, some of us are kind of trying to wear green a little bit and wearing olive green under here. Anyway, it's our Mike's got the green on. He's ready. The rest of us, not so much. Joined by Mike Tanier, as always. Cale Clinton is here. JP Acosta is here. And we're going to talk all about free agency so far. I think what's remarkable to me about free agency is how many guys haven't signed or been announced as agreeing to contracts yet. There's still a lot of really good players out there like Tyrann Mathieu and Teron Armstead and Allen Robinson. And I kept expecting this avalanche of players, and then Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday morning there was hardly anything, and then some stuff happened Wednesday afternoon, and now we're waiting again. And I think what we're all waiting for is the Deshaun Watson trade.
And I think some of the free agents out there and some of the teams, there's a clog in the drain, and it's a Deshaun-sized clog in the drain.
Yeah, and it essentially free up all the other quarterback moves as soon as it gets.
Right. Once Watson gets traded, then you got to think Garoppolo gets traded. Then you got to think Jameis Winston signed somewhere, and maybe Mariota and whoever else is out there.
Right. I do find it interesting that the biggest lull we've had so far in the last 2 weeks of NFL news has come once free agency's officially started.
Right.
Like the last week of lead up, the 2 days of legal tampering, just news that you couldn't stay away from Twitter. Now the league's officially open. It's pretty barren for news.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple
legal
now. Yes, now
boring. It's boring to do.
Everything's legal. That's boring.
Yeah, it was really fun when it was illegal. It was all about all about the risk.
Now you can have your new quarterback appear at a press conference and wear a suit in your team colors.
Oh,
and look like a hot dog.
Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz did, and Mitchell Trubisky did not.
Did he not, though? Because they're just black, right?
He did not wear a black and yellow suit. He wore just a regular suit. I don't think it's a black suit. It's like royal blue suit.
Good decision on his part. That wouldn't be a good-looking suit.
Yeah. I mean, Russell Wilson then had all the pictures with Ciara and the family all dressed up like that. And, of course, that solves all of the problems. Like, you look kind of ridiculous, and you put Ciara next to it. Never mind, everything looks amazing. Everything's perfect. And I'm not doing the Carson. I'm not taking the bait on Carson Wentz in the hot dog suit. I'm not taking the bait.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about Carson Wentz. We tried to figure out how to do this show. There's a couple of ways to do the free agency review. You can do it position by position, which is what I did when I was on with Mina Kimes on Mina Kimes' podcast on Tuesday. We're going to go with team winners and losers instead. And we've each picked a team to be our winner and a team to be our loser. So let's go around and talk about the teams that we have chosen. And we will start with Cale. And Cale's free agency winner is...
It's Denver. It's just who we were talking about with Russell Wilson. I mean, the first thing off, that trade is massive. Denver finally gets their quarterback for the first time since, Denver kind of lucked into Peyton Manning getting cut with a neck injury and pick up. They win a Super Bowl off that. My favorite thing about this trade is the fact that they were able to push for trading players instead of pick assets. The fact that they've only compromised or, leverage 2 years of draft capital instead of kicking it down to the road to 3+ years of draft capital, I think that's perfect. It's a really tight window for them to be able to do this. And also some of the moves that they've already made have kind of supplemented they've filled the holes created by this trade and who they lost. Shelby Harris leaves, goes to Seattle. They fill that right in with DJ Jones, who's built up a lot of momentum since, fighting for a free agent or fighting for a starting job in 2020, getting some reps in the 2019 run. He played really well last year, playing all 17 games for San Francisco. He looks really good. That's going to be a great run-stopping force for that Broncos defensive line. I think Randy Gregory, even though he hasn't played a full season for Dallas
never played a full season.
Between injuries and suspension, I think this is a great supplementary add to this pass rush in a conference that now, desperately needs pass rushers. That's just kind of the MO with all the quarterbacks you have now. I think it's a great add. It's being able to pry him away from Dallas at the last moment was a really, I think it's going to be a difference maker for this conference. And, playing alongside guys like Bradley Chubb, that's going to be a pretty fun front seven going forward. And yeah, they still have a couple holes, just different, like Randy Gregory stepping up into a role now that they have Kyle Fuller and who's the other corner?
Surtain. They need a nickel back.
I was trying to think of the other cornerback who's missing. That's hitting free agency. Bryce Callahan.
Bryce Callahan.
Yeah.
I think
Kareem
Jackson is also a free agent.
Yeah. So they still have some holes to fill in the secondary. They still have, they could probably supplement their offensive line a little bit more. But for where they're standing right now, this is a team where last year we were talking about the only thing that this roster was missing was a quarterback. And if you get your quarterback, especially a guy who's, even in a down year was 12th in DVOA, 12th in QBR, 15th in DYAR, a top end quarterback, especially getting him at that price point is, that's going to make your offseason. Now I get it. It's the AFC West and this is an arms race now. So it's a little bit different, but I mean, you get your guy, you have the weapons like Javonte Williams, you have this really good young receiving core. I think, outside of adding some O-line help, some secondary help, and maybe a tight end in there, I think this is a really great start to free agency.
I mean, one of the reasons they were able to trade Fant is that they have Albert O, whose last name I'm not going to try to pronounce. So they do have at least a starting tight end at this point. I think you can get a second tight end in the draft.
Right. This is definitely the Broncos went from I don't care to now I really care. No one should care, but I do care. And that's it. And that's a pretty big win for them.
Mm-hmm. My only concern is the fact that they've done all this and they've acquired Russell Wilson to maybe jump from 4th to 3rd in the AFC West.
That's going to be a murderer's row of a division.
It feels really strongly like, they could make it as a wild card, but it's going to be like 6th or 7th.
It's going to be a fist fight in the AFC top to bottom is going to be nuts. I'm really excited to watch one conference of football much more than I am the other conference at this point.
The NFC is Conference USA.
I don't remember the numbers, but somebody put out a tweet showing free agent spending so far this year, and it's something like 5 to 6 times as much money has been spent by the AFC teams compared to the NFC teams.
Right. The NFC, it's like the Packers are like, we're trying to hold on to everything. And the Buccaneers are trying to get the Brady crew back together. And the Saints are spending $24 on this Deshaun maneuver here. And everybody else is just sitting there like, well, we don't have a chance this year. Let's see what happens. Everybody in the AFC is let's push. Maybe we can keep up with, the teams at the top.
Now you know why Brady. I was going to say, now you know why Brady came back. He's not going to leave this league with a 2-team race in the NFC.
They saw Brady back and it's just like, all right, pack it up. Let's not try this year.
Right.
Let's leave it alone.
Well, we'll get to Tampa Bay in a second, but speaking of the AFC West, JP's winner in free agency is?
It is that team, the Los Angeles Chargers.
Los Angeles Chargers making big moves.
They're doing it again, guys. They're doing it every year. They do this thing where, we start to build faith. Like this is going to be it. And make the Chargers happen, but
everyone gets injured.
Everyone's injured, or the special teams just turns into complete terrible. But I think the moves that they made this year have really shored up their important and most standing hard press issues, especially on the defensive side of the ball. First off, for Khalil Mack, not having to give up their first rounder this year and only having to give up a second rounder for this year and a sixth round next year, that's a huge move for this team. Khalil Mack, despite not being as healthy as he used to be, he's still a great complimentary pass rusher to Joey Bosa, and he's helped out in that run game. Now you go and add Jackson. Their issues last year were a lot of teams will pick on whoever's opposite Samuel Jr. They have a second corner. Move Derwin James around, but he can't play corner. Now you have a guy with J.C. Jackson who has the ball skills and the production, that's the number one corner. So you're trotting out Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson, and Derwin James in a loaded secondary. And then I think probably my favorite signing is Sebastian Joseph. I am a Sebastian Joseph Day stan. I think what he did for the Rams and Brandon Staley's defense when he was there for the Rams in terms of shoring up that run defense is super important. He was one of the heroes this year and last. And now adding Sebastian Joseph Day, they don't spend on a Jordan Davis first round draft. They can still do that if they can put their needs into somewhere else. And then they went out and re-signed Mike Williams, who's really important. Offense is being kind of their jump ball deep guy, but that opens up for them going to add some more speed in the draft. They already addressed most of their holes on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they lost Chinanu Nwosu and added Khalil Mack.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I left
that trade
off the graphic by accident, but Mack is just a major upgrade on him.
Yes.
Yeah, Mack is a major up on Chinanu Nwosu. You go and add Sebastian Joseph Day, move Jerry out of the lineup completely, and then you add J.C. Jackson to start opposite of Asante Samuel. Now in the drill, surround Justin Herbert with weapons. You can go get a guy maybe like Jamison Williams from Alabama, or you can go get a right tackle to help Justin Herbert out on the offensive line. They set themselves up to essentially turn themselves into a power in the AF in one offseason. I think it shows you how much Brandon Staley has, I guess, influence of Staley on that team, especially on defense, because now they're starting like a Brandon Staley kind of team where you have the Sebastian Joseph Day run stopper, and then you can have guys like Joey Bosa. You can't double anywhere, or you're going to leave them with a one-on-one. So I'm really loving the moves this year. They're doing it to me again. I was looking up Chargers this week. I'm really feeling it this year.
CO the Legend says they were a few stops away from a playoff spot last year. Yeah, specifically like a couple of spots of Josh Jacobs that would have forced the Raiders to tie that game, and they would have had a playoff spot. So
they could have stopped
they
the
absolutely need the improvements on defense. I feel like the Chargers' need for wide receivers is a little overstated. They've got Josh Palmer, who they took in the third round last year. They've got Jalen Guyton as a speed guy. So I actually think they have other needs that are bigger than third wide receiver. They certainly could take Jamison Williams and give him a redshirt year, and then they would be amazing in the future, right? But obviously you take Jamison Williams, he's probably not going to help you much in 2022.
You've got so many guys available in the third, fourth round who are speed guys, who are slot guys, or you can grab Cole Beasley. He's available right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think
you can. I would say you can give Cole Beasley a shot, but I'm kind of thinking that you go for the right. You can go for the right tackle, maybe at 17. Yeah. If maybe Trevor Penning falls, you can slot him in across from Rashawn Slater, and then maybe take a Sky Moore or a Calvin Austin on day 2. That would lock that off. It's really, I just want to see Justin Herbert keep throwing 70-yard passes. They're really fast guys, because those are the really cool plays. That's what we're here for.
Love both of those receiver choices, and they'd be there probably late on day 2 when the Chargers can draft.
Yeah, I think adding Mike Williams into this is a huge add, just because he played so much more than just the deep target guy, like how he looked in the, before Brandon Staley and before Joe Lombardi restructured this offense. He looked like a more well-rounded receiver, and kind of like the first-round pick that he was originally drafted as. Mm-hmm. Now I just kind of see their needs as, they need someone better than Storm Norton to start at right tackle. I still kind of like the Jordan Davis just because run defense was such an issue for them last year. Right. But outside of that, I still think, Jalen Guyton and Josh Palmer are good assets to have. I still think this team would be on another level if they were able to add a really top third receiver to this rotation of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. But outside of that, it's right tackle, maybe Sebastian Joseph Day adds a lot to this interior defensive line. That's gonna be good, but maybe an inside linebacker as well, just to shore up this front seven, because the secondary is going to be awesome. Secondary is going to be really good in my eyes.
Yep.
See how the legend puts out. We talk ourselves into the Chargers every year, and they are always a tease, and they're doing it to us again this year. Absolutely.
Because somebody gets 6 guys get injured the first day of minicamp. That's almost always the case. So let's say
you just want to see those powder blues on a big stage. You want to see those powder blues in the Super Bowl.
I want a powder blue Super Bowl. That I'm not afraid to say it. I'll get out there up front and say powder blues in the Super Bowl. I'll pick the Chargers for every game this year. If we just get that, if they press us to wear powder blues in the Super Bowl, I'll pick the Chargers for every game.
They can't. They're the road team. AFC is the road team in next year's Super Bowl. So if the Chargers make it, they'll be wearing white, unless they play like Dallas.
Wow, there you go.
Oh
no, we'll be getting to the Super Bowl. Speaking of the AFC arms race, Mike's winner. Mike also picked an AFC team as his winner. We really like what the AFC teams did in free agency. So, Mike's winner is?
My winner is the Buffalo Bills, who are currently plus 650 to win the Super Bowl in the wake of their big signing, Von Miller, obviously. And when you're a team at the level of the Buffalo Bills, it is hard to improve upon a strength. I believe the Bills were 7th in adjusted sack rate last year. Very good pass rush overall. A lot of it had to be schemed up. It's sort of an all angles pass rush. There was no one superstar. It's coming at you all the way. Now you've got somebody, yes, an older player, but somebody who was still very effective as of the Super Bowl run for the Rams. And you add that missing piece there. But that's not all. And I'm glad we have it on the graphics here. This whole thing started on Monday morning with the re-signing of Isaiah McKenzie for 1 year and $15.50 an hour, the same that you can get right now working at a Wawa. And everybody else is out there. So the Jaguars are spending on all these, Christian Kirk level guys. They bring back McKenzie, who was unbelievable late in the season, just as an explosive weapon. Bring him back for nothing. A lot of what you see otherwise here are somewhat lateral, or, you make a move and then you get a guy back. Adding DJ Jones and Settle is good. They did have one more guy that left.
That's actually Daquan Jones, formerly
Daquan Jones. Excuse me, DJ. We're talking about him a minute ago. Daquan Jones and Settle. They lost Phillips, I believe, Harrison Phillips.
I didn't have that on here. And also Jerry Hughes is still a free agent, and my guess is that bringing in Von Miller, they don't keep him. And Beasley was cut too late to make the graphic.
Right. So you got, moves. The Broncos went from irrelevant to very relevant. That's significant. So they deserve to be on this list. The Bills went from contenders to, I think, absolute front runners, at least in the AFC. And it's hard to do in free agency when you have a stacked roster like this and not fall off. Other teams are falling off right now. I think the Chiefs are falling off a little bit as we speak. Bills are not falling off. They are adding, which is very tricky to do.
Yeah, the Von Miller, they paid through the nose for him, although it's less than it sounded. At first, it was $20 million a year. It looks like it's actually 17.5. Yeah. And then the last 2 years are some sort of BS years.
It's tomorrow bucks.
Yeah, a lot of money, but it's something that is a big need for them, and they had the money to do it because of other places where they've saved money, and they're going to be super dangerous next year.
Right. I really do. I really like that Roger Saffold signing. I said when it first happened, I love that for the Bills. He feels like a player where he's he's a mean guy in the run game, and they need that, especially at the guard position. That was one of their weaker spots on that offensive line. Now you shore it up with an experienced veteran like Saffold. He does have a little bit of an injury history, but now you shore up your offensive line on the interior and help protect the have at quarterback.
And you're bringing Morse back, as it shows in the thing. You're bringing back Mitch Morse, so you're not losing pieces on the line, which is another thing that I think they risk. Part of this is a lot of the moves they made were extending contracts last year, the year before. So a lot of their most recognizable players, starting with Josh Allen, are under the long-term contracts. So you don't come in with a lot of needs. You're also not the Packers coming in with a lot of, oh, we better do this and better do this and better do, oh, bye-bye Zadarius Jones, bye-bye Billy Turner, et cetera, as you shuffle things. They're kind of like, we're kind of in place here, and we can, and so being able to make that big addition without making these subtractions is tricky, and they pulled it off.
They could use a young corner in the draft to help replace Levi Wallace.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo really didn't come into this free agency with a ton of holes. It was really that defensive interior for me, and I think Tim Settle really shores that one up. Yeah, they can probably go for now a young corner in the draft. I think the biggest move that they've made is shoring up Isaiah McKenzie as the starting slot guy for them. I mean, they're two young receivers. I really fell in love with Gabriel Davis last year. It started for me when he was the only person to catch a touchdown in that crazy Gale Storm game on Monday Night Football between the Bills and Pats. And McKenzie showed out when he had that one opportunity to fill in for Cole Beasley in the other Patriots game in Foxborough, where he ended up with 11 catches for 125 yards. You know, with Stephon Diggs in the fold, this is a really fun receiving corner. This is, you know, I'm really high on what Josh Allen's going to be able to do. And they can even add, you know, maybe a fourth guy later on a day two with just the amount of receiver depth that there is in this draft. It's not a major position of need, but even adding a fourth guy in there. And with the two tight ends they already have, you know, Dalton Knox, now adding OJ Howard in there. Like this is going to be a very fun passing attack.
Yeah. Howard's going to be able to just block OJ Howard, and that's going to be a comfortable role for him.
Yeah. All right. What?
I think on defense, especially like at that corner spot in the draft, I think there are going to be guys available near the end of round.
Yeah,
they're going to be there's going to be a huge rushers and tackles. So maybe a guy like Kite Elam, Tripman, those guys are going to fall, and I think they're going to slot in perfectly across with Tre'Davious White. Like thinking about Kaiir Elam across with Tre'Davious White, that's a really nasty combination. Combined with Boyd and Hyde and secondary.
And
you just cut out all the
Buffalo has corners, so they don't have to draft someone and put them right into the starting lineup. Like they can bring guys along. My winner in free agency and trades is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm not saying that just because of Brady unretiring, because if you think about it, Brady unretiring is not an addition. It's a thing that now they haven't lost, right? Like it's a thing they already had last year.
That counts.
But they were going to lose Ali Marpet to retirement, and now they've replaced him with Shaq Mason, who Brandon Thorne has as a top 5 guard in the NFL. And if he's not a top 5 guard in the NFL, he's top 10. And Russell Gage, as much as I keep waiting for Tyler Johnson to break out because he was such a playmaker, score sleeper, it's not going to happen. Gage gives them a nice third receiver.
Right.
And then the fact that Brady came back contributed seriously to Ryan Jensen and Carlton Davis re-signing, probably for less money than they could get elsewhere. Plus, the deal for Chris Godwin is very cap-friendly for the next couple of years. Keeps Chris Godwin happy, keeps Brady happy. They are now obviously the ridiculous favorites in the NFC South. I think the last couple of weeks have gone about as well as you possibly could imagine them going for Tampa Bay, other than Marpet unretiring also.
Yes, they're about, by the way, minus 190 to win the AFC South. I don't think anybody else is up there. It looks like the house is trying to hedge its bet with the Saints a little bit, with Deshaun at plus 300. I don't think the Saints go up much past plus 250 with Deshaun in the fold. I think the Buccaneers are going to stay there, and with good reason. They're running all of this back, at least on offense. I think on defense they're going to suffer some losses. But
right, they lost Whitehead, the safety, and they still have not re-signed Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, and both of them are probably leaving. But they can make Joe Tryon a starter, and that takes care of the Pierre-Paul spot.
Right, and you've got Vita Vea, so you have somebody there, and you're bringing Davis back, so you have enough there on defense that you're not getting gutted by any means.
Yeah. I think things look really good for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I really like that Chris Godwin back. I think not having him in the playoffs, you could tell they really need a guy like Chris Godwin when it comes to in the run game. He contributes to blocking on those duo runs. And then in the pass game, he does all the dirty in the middle. He gets open real quick. That's what Brady. So they needed to keep Chris Godwin around, and they did it for a really good deal that helped Godwin and the Buccaneers out. So they're basically kind of running it back, and they're doing it again. Brady's doing it again, and I'm frustrated because he said he was retiring, and they just came back. Like
I fell for the joke.
So,
I thought he really was. I feel embarrassed that I fell for it.
I tweeted so many nice things about Tom Brady that now I have to go back and delete. I need him seeing that.
JC says Whitehead to the Jets was a sneaky good move for the Jets.
Yeah.
The Jets made a couple of sneaky good moves that we don't have them with a graphic as a winner, but they've definitely been a winner. They've made some good. Jacob Harris, is that his name? Jacob Martin, who's the edge rusher that they picked up?
Jacob.
And
the two tight ends, Conklin
and the tight ends, Conklin and Uzuma.
I've been very high on this Jets free agency just because it feels, not to say that they're going to now make the Super Bowl, but it feels very Bengals-esque to last year in terms of just really throwing a lot of like mid-level guys when you have a ton of problems, just bringing in a lot of veteran presence to fix a lot of these issues, especially on the defensive side of things. I love the move bringing in Whitehead on the safety side of things, and just the amount of bodies they've been able to throw at this problem from a sheer like number side, plus the 2 first-rounders they're going to have. I love just the foundation they're setting for the long term in this.
Yeah, and one of the signings I really like, I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball for the Jets. Not Jordan Whitehead, but DJ Reed at corner. Sign him away from the Seahawks. Yeah. DJ Reed is a really good corner. Able to keep him away from the Seahawks. I think now you have a legitimate combo at corner with Hall and DJ Reed, and then you can have Jordan Whitehead, and you essentially replace Marcus May with Jordan Whitehead, which I think is a very fair kind of commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing really good things on both sides of the ball.
Right. And to be clear, to contrast with a team that I think we'll be talking about in the losers, the price is right for these guys. They're not sort of like buying high at these guys. They're bringing in foundational guys for in the long term in an affordable way that can kind of like reset the roster without blowing lots and lots of resources like another team might have.
Shout out to Trent Baalke.
We'll be getting to the team. They're not one of our winners or our losers. They're our big question mark. But first, let's talk about our losers. And if the Jets and Bills are winners, then a loser is, and both Mike and JP picked the same loser in free agency. Sorry, not JP. Sorry, Mike and Cale. Mike and Cale picked the same loser, and that is the New England Patriots. Which one of you wants to go first on the losses of the New England Patriots?
Do you have an offensive coordinator yet?
No, there is no offensive.
Joe Judge, I guess.
The rumor is that Belichick is going to call his own plays.
I heard.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Right?
How many caps is Bill Belichick going to wear between defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, head coach, and GM?
Yeah, all of them. He's going to wear all of them. Eventually, he will outlive Robert Kraft. He'll own the team. Quarterback.
Oh, my God.
I heard Patricia was going to call the offense.
Oh my.
That would be even worse.
Right.
Hilarious.
But both are better than Joe Judge calling the plays.
I feel like having Matt Patricia call plays is Bill Belichick just saying F you to the entire league. I can do what I want. We're still going to win like 8 games. It won't matter. We can trot out a training dummy to call plays. We're still going to win 8 games. I can do what I want.
So what we have here, Shaq Mason gone for a 5th-round pick. The Patriots are trading Pro Bowl caliber linemen away so they can win rings with Tom Brady. Think about that for a second. Think of where the world has turned upside down like that.
I realize they're saving money by trading Shaq Mason. He was very expensive, but they could have saved that money by just not signing 2 expensive tight ends and then only using one at a time.
Right.
But here's my issue with that is Miguel Benz and Pat's Cap on Twitter laid out a ton of different moves for the Patriots to save cap space and create more cap space without getting into these void years and like with conversions and extensions, it's not, crippling them for years down the road. And basically what they've done is they've traded an all-pro caliber guard for a 5th round, cut Kyle Van Noy, and the Devin McCourty re-signing, I think, saves them like $600K on the cap. Right. And outside of that, they've done nothing. They've come into this with more
and they've traded
they
one of the top 5 or 10 cornerbacks in the league, J.C. Jackson, for Terrence Mitchell, who is a guy.
A body, yeah. But they've entered, or they now have more holes to fill than what they entered free agency with. Now they have like multiple offensive line holes to fill. Linebacker was already an issue. Cornerback was still an issue, but now it's worse. And they still haven't addressed, positions like wide receiver and edge rusher that we thought they were already going to be addressing.
Right. I forgot Ted Karras on the graphic, by the way. They also lost Ted Karras. So they lost both of last year's guards. One of them will be replaced by Michael Onwenu. Okay. But the other one, who knows?
Who is admittedly really promising as an offensive line prospect.
Right. But
and Trent Brown is in the wind right now. Trent Brown is in
the wind.
Trent Brown is in the wind. But, you make sure you get McCourty back. I think McCourty can still play, but it's sort of like these legacy guys. You bring Slater back, which is not a terrible move, except that where are your priorities right now as a team? Are you bringing back the legacy guys, or are you trying to build for 2022? You lost your fullback along the way, which would normally be a no biggie, except that this team used that fullback a lot last year because it was very much a power running formation. So you lose your guards and your fullback. And again, we don't know who the play caller is. So it's not like, that's different because Bill O'Brien's bringing his system in or whatever. So, all I can look at this and say is, well, the answer, I'm sure that if more of the traditional Patriots media were here, not you, Aaron, but the really traditional ones, Belichick has a plan. Hush, because Belichick has a plan. That's all we've got on this right now, is that Belichick has a plan, and that's fine. And
I agree. Belichick has a plan. I just don't know what it is.
Right.
And maybe we've become not like, 1 year of Belichick spending early in free agency has spoiled us, but this does typically fall in line with, the last decade and a half of Belichickian free agency spending, where he waits for the second wave of free agents. He lets all the big money get handed out in the first couple days of free agency. Then he swoops in and makes some savvy deals. But this New England Patriots team isn't in a position to capitalize off savvy mid-level deals. They need names. They need big players to actually compete in the arms race that is this AFC. And maybe they're just punting on 2022 because they see all this cap leverage to this year.
They're definitely not punting on 2022. Belichick thinks he's winning here. Belichick does not punt on years.
Right.
Especially at his age, he can't be. Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine that's what the issue is. Maybe, it's an install year where they're assuming last year's free agents are now going to take steps, and I don't know what they're going to do in the draft. I can't imagine Belichick addresses this wide receiver need in the draft after missing on N'Keal Harry in 2019 or 2018 at this point. I can't even remember 2019. But I can't imagine him addressing it now and assuming that, he's going to take that risk in a position so deep. But they now have way more holes to fill in this draft anyway.
And I think they will go bargain shopping, and they'll probably do a pretty good job. But you're absolutely right, Cale. It's not just it's value added to our Super Bowl puzzle, and therefore when we get this spare part, it's great. It's like you need these guys to step up. They're also going to be jumping into that pool with a lot of teams that have a lot of money and are waiting. There's a lot of teams sitting around waiting right now, as we sort of said early in the show, where there's a lot of free agents left, and you don't want to be going out there when the Bengals still have money to spend.
Yeah.
And competing, because now it's not, come play with Tom Brady. It's come play with Joe Burrow. That's going to be a pitch that's going to move some of these guys.
JC says, you nailed it. The Pats like to shop in the bargain bin. And don't forget, by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube or Twitch right now, you can comment and ask questions in the discussion thread. We do want to hear from you. Don't forget also to like and subscribe to the show, no matter where you're listening or watching us, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, or you're listening afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Let's go to JP's loser. JP, your loser so far in free agency and the trade market is?
Yes.
I think our producer waits for us to announce.
It's the biggest loser for me is the Washington Commanders, and it's because of Carson Wentz mainly. I just really don't understand why they would take higher contract for a guy who is not good. Like they're taking all $30 million for a guy who, okay, so he was the worst quarterback in the league on the Eagles. Brings him in on the Colts and says, yeah, I can fix him. Doesn't fix him. Now you're going to be like, yeah, we can fix him.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If Frank Reich couldn't fix him,
that's the biggest. Can't fix Carson Wentz. Nobody is fixing Carson Wentz. It's just so many, like, it's the turnovers and the bad decisions. They continue to happen. And now he's not as lucky. Like that Super Bowl year where he played really well, that was a whole lot of, like, variance. Really crazy somehow worked out. He tried to make those throws again, and they just didn't work. Now you're going to bring him in to a team where you're possibly going to bring in, you're losing Brandon Sheriff, Eric Flowers. You're going to bring in Andrew Norwell to try and replace Eric Flowers. That offensive line still is going to need help. That team's still number 2. You lost Matt Ioannidis, who was a really important part of that defensive line rotation. You're going to lose Landon forever. This team still has holes, and now they don't have a lot of money to fix it because they're paying.
I think we lost JP, but I think we can finish his thought for him because they're paying Carson Wentz.
they are paying Carson Wentz. That's right.
It's just someone would take on that entire contract. You couldn't get anything else. Sure, you won Carson Wentz. Congrats. If you think you can be the guy to fix him, sure. But you're going to take on all $30 million of that contract and not make the Colts pay for it? Like, that is galaxy brain. Like, yeah. They saw that last game against Jacksonville. It was like, oh, yeah, this guy. That's our quarterback. And it says a lot about what they think of the upcoming quarterback class. Well, that they would take on that entire Wentz contract. But still, like, he is, from everything that we've heard, coming from Philly, coming from Indy, that not only is he not good, it's the locker room presence where he's not good and he thinks he's really good and doesn't want to be coached. Just really shows up on Sundays because he's not good. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing?
Washington with a notoriously great culture also. Like, already bringing in a bad locker room guy to be a leader when they've already got a lot of locker room issues of their own already. I can't make any sense of this it's really damning when you realize that last year the Eagles fleeced the Colts for the conditional first round pick they got for Carson Wentz, and now you're a year later after the performance they had, the Colts are now fleecing the Commanders with getting 2/3 or a second swap and a third. Like,
yes,
it is trade value is absolutely deteriorated. It's shocking that the Colts were able to make any sort of draft capital profit on this trade at all.
Every time you get less back for him, but it's still a fleecing.
Yeah.
It's like,
this will be the last
down market, but it's still too much. Yeah,
exactly.
This I would think would be
the Commanders kind of. If the Commanders have kind of approached it to that meme where, like, my work here is done, but you didn't do anything. They didn't do anything in free agency, but they're done because Carson Wentz. You have to pay Carson Wentz $30 million, and that's it for free agency. You're done because you have to pay that guy. But at least his matches the Sure.
Let me sub in here with a team that's not one of our winners or losers, but just to get your guys' take on, because JC asks, I hope you can all help me understand what Seattle is doing. We didn't pick Seattle as one of our losers, but I mean, they're restarting.
Yes.
Basically, right? I mean,
it's like they're rebuilding, but they're also retaining some of their guys. So part of it looks like, oh, this is a rebuild. They got draft picks back. They got some next year asset draft picks back, and then they retained Sidney Jones and some other guys. So on that end, it makes sense. On the other hand, it's the Seahawks, and they're always going in two directions and making sort of goofy decisions in the draft, et cetera. We talked a little bit this on the draft show with Chad Ryder, who I know is in the chat right now, and some folks believe they're going to get the quarterback in the draft. I don't think they're going to get the quarterback in the draft. I think they're going to try and rebuild through the draft, and then they're going to look at their options quarterback a year from now. But it's hard. I mean, obviously, we all heard these like positive pro Drew Lock statements yesterday. I think what we were hearing is press conference positive Drew Lock statements, not like he's really our long-term starter statements. But we'll have to wait and see.
For me, at least, I think the rebuild model would be fine if what they got for Russell Wilson didn't basically cancel out what they lost in the Jamal Adams trade or what they paid in the Jamal Adams trade. It's kind of net zero, with the only real turnover there being, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, and a couple day twos. It really hasn't shaken out well for what they're attempting to restock their roster with.
And they brought Nwosu in. I was just checking up on them.
Yeah, but they cut Benson Mayowa. Is Nwosu that much better than Benson Mayowa?
I mean, they've got a very specific type they like for their defense. But one of the issues we've had for the Seahawks for the last couple of years is they've got the types for this defense that doesn't really work anymore in the NFL unless your type turns into a Bobby Wagner and a Richard Sherman and an Earl Thomas, and those guys aren't walking back through the door. So
they don't have the type. They have the types for the front seven, but they don't have the types for this defense for the secondary. They don't have a Richard Sherman. They don't have an Earl Thomas. They don't even have Cam Chancellor, right? Adams
That's
is
not really a type. That's a Hall of Famer is our type. That's not like a thing you go get,
CO will get. They went and switched up they switched up their defense by bringing in Clinton Hurts, brought in those guys to kind of switch up that defense. I think they understand that that's not going to work anymore. Bobby Wagner's gone. Nope, none of them are walking through that door anymore. But I knew what the Seahawks were doing. Like, on one hand, I feel like, they can try and rebuild through the draft, find the quarterback. On the other hand, I keep thinking, like, hey, Matt Ryan in Seattle, we can get a little crazy, but I don't know. I honestly don't know what the Seahawks are doing.
CO, we're going to get to Jacksonville in a second, but first, let's hit the team that I have as my loser. And sorry, Patrick, it's not the Chiefs, so we don't have the Chiefs on our loser list. My team that is a loser in free agency is the Dallas Cowboys.
Ooh. How about the Cowboys?
Because do you know what they've added? None. It's none. I don't know anything in particular of value that they've added. What they've lost is, yes, they re-signed Michael Gallup. Hopefully he's healthy for week one. But by having to trade away Amari Cooper and then losing Cedric Wilson, you now have your 3-wide set is now CeeDee Lamb, great. Michael Gallup, hopefully healthy, and Noah Brown. Lose Randy Gregory, and that's a big loss. Blake Jarwin's a medium loss. Xavier Woods, Connor Williams. It's just a lot of losses without adding things. And they just cut Lael Collins, says Brian. They must have just done that after we went on the air.
They couldn't even try to trade partners.
They tried to trade Lael Collins, but they couldn't. Nobody would take the contract.
That's one where the Bengals should have just thrown a 5th-round pick at them and seen.
I agree with you. I would, if I'm the Bengals, I would have just thrown. But you know what the Bengals must think? We can just go out and sign him now.
That's it. But now they're in a pool with lots of other people thinking the Patriots.
I'm with you. If I'm the Bengals, I would have thrown a 6th or something and tried to get him.
Right. Of course, they might have done that, and Jerry might have, for some reason, said no and just eaten this contract. And you're right. That's a lot of losses for a team that's supremacy in the NFC East, and the fact that they're a Super Bowl contender was supposed to be built on that offense. Now, of course, it was more about the defense, but you lose Gregory and you haven't
right. The defense is going to regress a little bit. I don't think there's no way around that. Obviously, heavily dependent on turnovers.
Yes.
The offense was heavily about that 3-wide receiver set. The 3-wide receiver set is gone now.
2 tight end set too.
Yeah, they need pieces.
Right.
Well, and I really think that Randy Gregory, losing out Randy Gregory is going to hurt them on defense, especially because the way they used Parsons is kind of a chess piece, moving them all downs and having DeMarcus Lawrence and Ray Gregory on both edges. Now you have to either find a guy to put on the other side of Marcus. You move Michael Parsons edge on third down, which really, like, maybe it'll work, but you'd much rather have that guy so you can use Michael Parsons' versatility to its
I mean,
fullest
they do have
extent.
Terrell Basham, but they want more than that.
Yeah. So you grab a Jabo in the draft because it's the Cowboys. They're going to take an edge rusher. It's going to be a big name, major program edge rusher. Let's throw a Jabo in there in the draft. All right, so you kind of solved that problem. You still have all of these problems on offense along the way. And you're right, Aaron. It was so turnover heavy on defense that the idea that you're just going to run it back and have that kind of success is very unlikely. Even with Carson Wentz twice a year, it's very unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, no one in the NFC East has been back-to-back division winners since the Eagles did it in 2001 to 2004. And if, I don't think the Cowboys are doing a good job of trying to, retake that mantle, but also no one in the NFC East is really trying to challenge them much either on it. It's right. I'm pretty like the Amari Cooper thing. I understand from a contract perspective, but you're really losing a lot of the offensive firepower you could have had, and you have to assume there's going to be some sort of defensive regression in there just after the pretty anomalous season that they ended up getting out Trevon Diggs and some of the other secondary members in there, and losing Xavier Woods also hurts a lot. It's I can't imagine. They seemed like contenders when the NFC was a 2.5 team race between the Rams, Packers, and kind of Cowboys. But now, with still some top end talent, Brady coming back, potentially Deshaun Watson coming into the mix as well. It's looking pretty grim for Dallas right now.
Yeah, they also have some other prospective starters that are still free agents and who it doesn't look like they're bringing back, including Jaron Kearse and DeMonte Casey and Leighton Vander Esch and Keanu Neal.
And that's like the entire middle back going in their defense. I think Vander Esch is gone, so maybe one or two of those guys come back along the way. This somehow ends with the Giants winning the NFC East this year. That's how this is shaping up. It's like,
that would be a hell of a win for good coaching.
Daniel Jones redemption arc? What does that entail?
Or the Tyrod Taylor redemption. No, it's the Daniel Jones. But it will not be because the Giants are good. It'll be because it'll be a three-way dumpster fire. The Eagles will somehow trip over this idea that, hey, we're okay and have 3 draft picks, and now we have Hassan Reddick. They will trip over themselves. Washington, we know what's going to happen there, and the Cowboys screw this up, and the Giants 8-9 their way up to success.
The legend says, I'll say this about the Giants. I do like the Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale hires. Well, that's why I said it's a big win for coaching, because if the Giants win the division, that's because they're unbelievably well coached.
Right. And all of those guys, and Joe Sheen, is clearly like, all right, we're rebuilding. We're not going to say the word rebuilding. We're reshuffling. We're not spending goofy money. We're trying to clean our cap up. So the reason I like them is because they're taking their time, not doing anything goofy. If that somehow turns into a win, I'm being facetious. If that turns into a win, it's great coaching and also some train wrecks all around the division.
If the Giants win the division this year, give Brian Daboll the next 5 Coach of the Year awards, Garrett. That team is not good right now. If they win the division, Brian Daboll needs to.
Let's talk about one more team that we don't know. I don't know if you would call them a winner or a loser, because they're definitely better now than they were before free agency. But, oh, my God, did they have to spend a lot of money to make it happen? And that is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep.
Oh, man.
First? The guy who wouldn't wear his Jacksonville Jaguars beanie goes first, JP. What do you got?
All right, sure. So, I mean, I really like these players. Darius Williams is a good addition to the Jaguars defense. Foye Oluokun is a good addition to the Jaguars defense. Oli Padukasi, Brandon Scherf, they're good additions. Christian Kirk is an addition to an offense at a position that they really needed. But why did they have to pay so much? Like, that's really my biggest thing. And I know a lot of the contracts are like for Christian Kirk's deal. It's really 2 years, $7 million guaranteed. There's an out after the second year. Same thing with Oluokun and Scherf. I felt like they understood they were going to have to pay a lot of money to these guys. And I think the main reason is because just look at Jacksonville. They're kind of a dumpster fire. They didn't have a coach for like 48 days after they fired Urban Meyer. They still have Trent Baalke around, and I really think that's the reason why so much. Because in order to get guys to come to Jacksonville, they were going to have to pay a lot of money, and I guess that's the breaks. But in doing that, you're going to lose guys like DJ Chark, Miles Jack, the cap casualty.
Yeah, I'm
really
sorry I
hurt.
left him off the graphic, but Miles Jack is also that's still a good player. To have to cut him for salary cap reasons is wacko.
Right.
He's a good player. I think a lot of what happened with him in Jacksonville was moving the green dot on and off of him and turning him from the mic into the wheel, back into the wheel. That really kind of messed him up. And again, like they reset the wide receiver market with Christian Kirk's deal. I didn't think they're gonna reset the market with Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
Okay. I figured they're gonna reset the market at receiver. They needed a receiver. They were going to pay a lot of money for a receiver. Christian Kirk, okay. But now the biggest thing is you're putting a lot of stress on that receiver you pick up in the draft because they need an outside receiver. This roster right now is Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Jamal Agnew, Laviska Shenault, and Marvin Jones.
Don't sleep on Marvin Jones.
Right.
That's 4 slot receiver Marvin Jones. And Evan Ingram, the big slot receiver. They're just gonna line them up like backing them in the slot, like EFL. They're gonna put stress on that outside receiver they pick up in the draft to be their number one. To be their number one receiver. And it's gonna ask a lot of that guy.
Brian Knowles was talking about the Baalke buck, which is like the Dogecoin of South Florida, the worst cryptocurrency in the world, the Baalke buck. Here's the thing: you talk about, these deals, they're only 2-year deals, and you're right, JP. It's like if you're the Jaguars, and you should be looking for fundamental pieces. You shouldn't be saying, "Oh, it's a 2-year contract." We're on a 2-year rebuild. If we're getting a young player in here that we believe in, let's extend him. Let's get a guy who deserves 4, 5, 6 real years on a contract. But instead of doing that, you've got all of these deals. And Evan Ingram's a good example because I was talking to people on Twitter about it. It's like, the pass dropping thing, that's kind of a New York Giants meme, etc. Okay, fair enough. If Ingram balls out, you only got him on a 1-year contract. So what are you doing? Renting Evan Ingram? If you think this is a young player that we think we can solve his hands problem, he's going to be the safety valve for Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be like the tight end that comes up and becomes his George Kittle or whatever, or Travis Kelce, whatever you think he's going to be. Then pay him. That. If you don't think he can be that, don't sign him for a 1-year expensive prove-it deal. If you don't think he's that guy, go get Greg Dulcich in the 2nd round of the draft and try to make him that guy. None of these moves make logical sense beyond we stuck duct tape on this situation for 1 year at a premium price, and we're going to figure this out again in 2 years if we manage to get to 7 and 10 or 8 and 9.
Darius Williams signed a 3-year deal, and he is still a young guy. That's one that's not just a prove it deal. That's you're going to be around here for a while deal. And Scherf is be here around for a while deal, although Scherf is not
he's going to be
here.
I think the Darius Williams signing is really interesting because he hasn't played a lot of snaps in the slot. And I think they're signing him to be the slot corner because Tyson Campbell's he's not a slot corner. Shaq Griffin is not a slot corner. So you paid a lot of money. Now you have 3 outside guys. Maybe Williams going to hope it works. I mean, I like the players. Let me get out. I like the players, with the exception of Zay Jones. I was okay, sure. I like the players in essence, but paying that much money for them is really it's a little scary to me because I think Steven Ruiz put out a great story for The Ringer today where he's basically saying these are they're fine players to sign, but Trevor Lawrence is going to get a big extension coming up. You're going to have to pay him a lot of money, and you're going to be on the books for a Darius Williams and a Brandon Scherf and a Christian Kirk for a long time. You're essentially backing yourself up against the cap for Christian Kirk and Foye Oluokun, who are good players, but I don't know the player you back up against the cap for.
Yeah, you
And
should be
even with
banking.
with signing Oluokun, you had to let go of Miles Jack. So you still
Right.
have holes along that defense at edge rusher, at linebacker now because you don't have a Miles Jack, at safety. Now you still have who's along the offensive line.
Right.
You re-signed Cam Robinson. And I think Trent Baalke said that they're going to work on an extension, which is like, sure, okay.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
But
tagging him didn't make a lot of sense to begin with. I mean,
yeah.
Tagging him made sense because you were going to lose Norwell, you were going to lose Cam, and Can, and it's like, all right, we're going to make sure that we have like a guy that we can count on. But like extending him and saying like, oh, this is one of our foundational pieces. That's banana pants. And in terms of the cap, you should be banking a chunk of your cap at this point. It's like, okay, Trevor Lawrence is cheap. We're a rebuilding year. We're going to grab some pieces. Let's bank some cap for 2023 so we can be bold in the future. Not just we've got it now, let's spend it now. Let's make sure it's pooped through a goose here with this money, because that's what they've been doing for the last 12 years. And it hasn't worked, and it's perpetually kept them as a 5-win, 6-win team in a state of rebuilding.
I'll say this about the receiving core and just the skill position players they've accrued. Objectively, this is a better unit than last year in terms of especially receivers. That being said, they're paying a lot of wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s like wide receiver 1s. And it like the money on this doesn't make sense. Also, shout out to Derek Carr, who for the second year in a row got a receiver a bag off of 1 year of positive play. Nelson Aguilar, now Zay Jones. I mean, hats off to the guy to helping out his buddies.
Hey, man, Derek Carr is the ultimate team guy. But you're right. They have they're paying a lot of size. They have a lot of slot receivers. Like, I mean, Marvin Jones and Laquan Treadwell are really the only outside guys. Listen to inside. Like, Christian Kirk is better on the inside. It's just interesting, to say the least.
Laquan Treadwell should be an outside of the NFL guy. I'm just pointing that out right now. And do you remember the Nick Foles Eagles offense where everything was RPOs going into the slot, Aguilar on one side, Ertz on the other, and everything was bit, 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 bit. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. And I can see that as a building block thing for Trevor Lawrence, but you want to be able to extend out of that in the foreseeable future and not spend a ton of money to create that.
This is my extremely coping voice here.
Copium.
Laquan Treadwell didn't play that bad last year. I'm coping really bad right now. It wasn't that bad last year.
I'll let you talk yourself into it.
You
need something.
Objectively, he was probably the second best receiver on this team.
And Tavon Austin was the third best. So
that sounds really bad, but like he blocked really well. He managed to catch the ball. I'm sold. If he can catch the ball, okay, I'm coping at this point. I just need receivers who can catch at this point.
All right, that finishes it up for this show. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. We really appreciate it. Still plenty of free agency left to do, so we'll be back next Thursday talking about probably Deshaun Watson and Jimmy Garoppolo getting traded by then, I would think.
Yep.
Thank you to Cale. Thank you to JP. Thanks, as always, to Mike. Thank you to all of you for watching and listening. Don't forget about the draft show with Mike and Derek Klassen Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Enjoy the rest of free agency. So long, everybody.